what is your 20-year roadmap? What is your 30-year roadmap? Right? Singapore is really looking ahead and said, look, I want to make Singapore the crypto center of the world, the fintech center of the world. I want to make Singapore be a leader in robotics, right? In artificial intelligence. But when they say, I want to make Singapore a leader, they actually believe with conviction that they can make it a leader. Right? Whereas over here, we always say we want to make ourselves leaders, blah, 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 but it's mostly just writing on paper, right? Because you tell me, right, in which particular industries have Malaysia made ourselves leaders? There's the palm oil industry, that's mostly private sector driven, right? Maybe
Semiconductor.
Semiconductor, but that you can also say it's through the good graces of Intel.
Correct.
Right? On the other hand, maybe Islamic financing, okay, with a relatively stable regulatory framework, etc., right? But when it comes to the new economies, right, I've not seen anything where they say, I want to make Malaysia the world leader when it comes to electric vehicles, right? Or at least have a world-class industry in that space.
Before we begin the podcast, have you gotten your free ebook? It's called the Build a Six-Figure Portfolio Guidebook. Now, inside it, we share with you the tips and tricks to bring your stock investing skills to the next level. The best part, it's only 10 pages long and it's totally free. Whether you're on Spotify or YouTube, the link to download is in the description, or you can go to www.firl.co/FREE or www.firl.co/free. Hello everyone. Welcome back to the FIRL Podcast, best place for long-term stock investor. Now, today is, as always, a very, very special guest. Now, he has a background in oil and gas, in consulting, in entrepreneurship, startups, and the likes, and investing as well. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Warren Leow.
Thank you very much, MJ. Thank you very much, John, for welcoming here.
So,
Thank you so much for coming.
Sorry, John? What did you say?
Thank you so much for him to come.
Okay. I know this is a rescheduled podcast, and the reason you had to reschedule was because there's a lot of, in your own words, a lot of firefighting.
Yes, right? At that point in time.
So yeah, we're just checking, how big is the fire now?
The fires have been controlled, right? So at that point in time, we had a couple of projects that were coming live without any particular reference. So it was constantly with us trying to find a way through. Right. Whether we're talking about operational issues or whether we're talking about launching some new NFT related projects, which we delve further into in a short while.
Yes, for sure. Now, I just want to begin by, we like to ask what is like a 10-year-old, Warren, like in relation to how do you see money? How do you see business? What was your first impressions on things like that?
So when I was 10 years old, I was a boy growing up in a very middle class background in Klang. My dad was a police officer. My mom was a housewife. At that point in time, I was standard 4. And the way out of that cycle was through education, or at least it was what was ingrained in my mind. Right? You get good grades, you get to do Form 6, you score well for Form 6, you can get into UM, right? Local university, which is the best amongst the public universities. And then you can get a comfortable job, right? But the whole mindset changed when I was lucky enough to get a government scholarship after Form 5, right? So I was able to get a JPS scholarship, went abroad for my studies. I did accounting and finance at the LSE, and essentially that broadened up my mind into the possibilities. And also the realm of experiences, especially when it comes to working abroad and experiencing different types of organizations and different types of businesses. Back to your question with regards to my philosophy of money, coming from a very middle class background, right? No holidays abroad, no fancy restaurants. It was a simpler life and simpler means, but I always knew that I wanted to at least make more, okay, as a way to experience different things in life, right? So that was the principal driver, right? Because for me, it was a way out to broaden the horizons. It was a way out to experience, different experiences. It was a way to see the world. It was a way to do more interesting things.
Right.
Yeah. And that's spurred me on. So, from a very young age, I think I was lucky enough to get the nurture as well as the, I suppose, the kind of background where my parents were happy and wanted to invest into education. My dad would guide me with my homework, make sure that, I stay on track. And from a young age, because I was instilled upon me that grades will be a way out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I studied hard lah. Right. I tried to study hard.
But I have to ask, did he give you any tricks, any police tricks,
Not for studies lah, but you see, the thing with my dad was that he was a trained chemist before he joined the police force. So he had a background in science. He was good in math. And I could get some help lah, right, on that part. But my mom also, and my dad were always investing into books. Right, they would bring me to the library along my sister, every weekend, and it cultivated, I guess, a sense of curiosity. That's important, as well as an appreciation, or always wanted to learn more. Right. Sometimes learning for the sake of learning, and I learn a lot of random stuff that I don't really use in my life. Right.
Really?
But it's just a general interest when it comes to, let's say, history or economics or geography or science and the likes.
Right.
And I think that kind of a habit of reading is something that I found to be useful over the years. Let's say fast forward from 10 years to where I am right now, or halfway through the point, right? The reading opens up imagination.
100%.
Reading opens up awareness, right? And reading also opens up pattern recognition. How do you draw everything together when you try to rationalize and break things down into concepts and subsequently apply it as knowledge?
Right. So as you entered university, I have a couple of questions, right? Number one is why accounting and finance? Maybe I'm wrong, but they're not known to be the most imaginative fields. Actually, well, debatable, but yeah. And what, in terms of like the eye-opening, the mind-opening experiences, transitioning from, middle-class family from Klang, going to LSE, what were the big, you can call it culture shocks, realizations that you made when you were in London?
Okay. I think number one, why accounting? For me, I knew from a young age that I didn't want to be a doctor, I didn't want to be a lawyer, I didn't want to be an engineer. I wanted to get into business or a general running of things, building things, trying to build a business, etc. Right. And then my dad told me when I was young, right? No, if you become an accountant, all you need to do is sign, and then you can get a 5-figure job, right? at that point in time, joking aside, that was what the government offered in terms of scholarship, right? So I think that was the right course for me, because the modules which I enjoyed the most would be finance and also economics, right? And although I did study accounting and finance at LSE, and I am a professionally qualified accountant, right? I did my CIMA because of all the exemptions I could get.
Yeah,
I've never really practiced as an accountant. Right, and I don't think I would have made a good accountant as well, because for me, being a good accountant requires very detailed attention to details.
I see.
Right? And for me, it was always a big picture kind of
guy.
thinking,
Okay.
how to link concepts together and how to get things moving.
Right.
Yeah. And on the second point, with regards to culture shock right now, how was the transition? For me, it was not that difficult in the sense that I suppose reading helped, right? So I was reading beyond my years, even at an early stage, and that to me, at least, I grew up on books like from Annie Blyton or I was watching mostly English shows. I didn't go to a Chinese school. I went to a normal Kebangsaan school, right? Yeah. So that was Methodist ACS, right? And the stuff that I was exposed to from a young age was more skewed towards, let's say, the Western audiences anyway, right? even though I grew up speaking Mandarin at home, it was not an issue transitioning over because I think, number one, after Form 5, we were sent to a boarding school. In Malaysia, I was based in Banting, College Mara Banting. And I was doing my
A-levels, right?
international baccalaureate over there.
IB.
Yes.
IB, okay.
Yeah. When I got my offer letter for IB, I didn't even know what it was, right? Because that was nearly 20 years ago, and nobody really knew what IB
That is
was.
true, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that also helped to allay part of it because everything was taught in English.
I see.
We're at boarding school, right? And I could see that it was more difficult for some where their primary language of thinking or learning at that point in time, was not really in English, especially the Malay speakers or Chinese speakers who come from asrama schools, right? So those 2 years of preparation also helped, and I suppose when you head over to a faraway land, everybody's on the same page, right?
That's true.
It's an alien land. You're forced to fend for yourself. You learn to adapt. You learn to be independent. And I think that is also one of the benefits of leaving home earlier rather than later. Because you learn to look for your own apartment. You learn to find your own part-time job.
Correct.
Right. You learn to apply for internships. Earlier rather than later. Hence, I'm always a proponent of kids. Working as soon as possible, as early as possible, even when you're studying, because it helps you mature a lot faster.
I completely agree with that. Yeah. Back to your learning habits and all that. Do you think in the state of where children are today, I mean, if you take yourself back to when you were 14 and 15 versus the children at 14 and 15 today, how challenging will it be for them to get them to read? I mean, I'm pretty sure if you don't have kids yourself, you have family members or nieces or cousins who are at that age and they actually struggle to read. How do you think we can actually, alleviate parents or help children actually read better from your perspective?
I think, personally, the reading habits have changed even for people at our generation. Simply because, my own attention span has shortened.
Yeah.
Okay, because of, I suppose, information overload from social media or from mobile devices or where we actually consume information.
Yes.
Right? You check out the websites, you check out the snippets, right? You get a constant stream of news from Bloomberg and Reuters or Wall Street Journal or New York Times, in comparison to in the past where you read a long form book, right?
Yes.
There are a lot fewer distractions, right? Would it be fair to say that kids nowadays don't read? I would beg to differ a little bit. Simply because the way they absorb information or knowledge, right, comes from a multitude or a spectrum of origins, right? You don't necessarily just learn from reading anymore. You learn from watching YouTube videos.
Oh yes,
right? And that's actually a more effective way to learn arguably.
Yeah, in many ways, yes.
Yeah, like for example, I spent many years struggling to go through the textbook on the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. But yesterday, what I did was I just turned on YouTube and I finished watching a whole animated narrative within an hour and a half.
What was the YouTube channel?
Was it History Bros or Cool Bros or something?
Okay, yeah, I know which one.
So basically, within an hour and a half, I could absorb the entire big picture. Right.
Yes.
So similarly, if you want to learn about finance, right, principles of finance, or how do you value a company, right? You can go through it by reading, or you can watch a YouTube clip, and within an hour and a half, you get the concepts because things are illustrated out, and it becomes a lot more intuitive, right? And it's not just that you can watch from one source, you can watch another source, and another source, and you look at the same piece of information or same piece of knowledge or teaching from different teachers, and it gives you another chance to absorb differently as well.
Right. Yeah, fantastic perspective. Because my parents or my kids' grandparents, they're like, how come they're watching YouTube every day? I said, but this is a new form of medium. There's learning, a new form of learning, new form of, and I think I had the same experience with you about the San Guo Yi because I don't read Mandarin, so I watched the same YouTube clip to
probably.
But John, I think even if you read Mandarin and you read the Chinese the records, I don't think it'll be any easier because it's in the age.
Fun, right?
Yeah, it's not just the language, it's how they write. So you mentioned just now, so you like reading books, and we'll go on to your days in oil and gas and consulting later on. But since you really love books, so I want to know, like, was there, not so much now or in the past 10 to 15 years, but more so when you were younger, or even when you're just about to enter college or during uni days, was there a book that left an impression?
I mean, there were many books, and I suppose with different books, you have different sources of inspiration, right? I was reading up on, let's say, I had a thick book like on the history of Europe, right?
Wow.
And that to me was useful because it gave a lot of historical context and geographical context, right? And even a bit on economics, right? The reason why I raised that particular book in particular is because for anybody to be a savvy investor, right, or to at least be able to recognize patterns,
yes,
you need to understand history.
100%.
Okay? Because history tends to repeat itself. Right, whether we're talking about a certain company on a certain life cycle growth, right, or the contextual information behind, macroeconomic factors, right? How was it in the 1930s? How was it during the Great Depression, right? Or 1907 crash, right? 1987 crash, 1997 crash, right? 2007, 2008 crash, right? All these things have certain parallels, even if you look back hundreds of years, or even collapse of great civilizations, as an example.
Oh yeah,
right. Whether it's because of taxation, or whether it's because of interest rates, or cost of borrowing, or surplus of labor or capital, all these things have certain parallels in different shapes and forms, but the underlying principle will still remain the same because things are always cyclical, right? So that to me, was more about how to tie things, from a big picture perspective. But on the other hand as well, I also enjoyed fiction, which also unleashes imagination. Right? Whether you're talking about let's say sci-fi like Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula Le Guin, or even Frank Herbert's Dune. Right?
So did you watch the movie?
Yeah,
right.
Like the movie? But if you read the books, right, and then you sort of realize that hey, it's actually a whole encyclopedia on philosophy, on religion, and also on economics.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Spice, right?
Spice, and how would what the corollary is that you can draw as a parallel to oil.
Oh, 100%. It's just that you can't get high off oil, that's it.
You can't get high off oil, right? But you basically you need spice, just like oil, to move things around.
Yeah, correct.
Right? And why would people fight for it? You can draw parallels or certain relations to whatever's happening in the whole macroeconomic situation right now, right?
John, and here Warren was saying, it's gonna be a half an hour podcast.
I when he started talking about all this, right?
Yeah.
When I know when he says he's a well-read man, I think 3 hours is also not enough. Sometimes.
It's whether you have the energy left for me to complete a 3-hour podcast. Okay, so John, before I move on to his working life, right? Do you have any questions?
No, I think I'm more interested to get into the startup scene.
Okay,
so go ahead.
Great. So before we go startup, that's a very juicy part of the podcast. But before that, you started off, I believe, a mixture of oil and gas and consulting. So why is it that an accountant is going into these industries?
So when I was graduating, all my friends were either going to investment banking or consulting, right? Those were the kind of like the marquee jobs at that point in time, like 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? Because those were the most high-paying professional jobs. I had friends who went into actual companies or insurance companies. I had friends who went into law firms, of course, and also accounting firms. Right. But for me, I always knew that I wanted to start something, right? So I figured, if I would join a graduate training program that gave me 3 years of operational experiences, that was a good way for me to induct myself into things. So during my second year at uni, I did an internship within a Russian business unit, right? So of BP,
that, yes.
right? So I was attached to a business unit that was building or trying to build a multi-billion-dollar project of the island of Sakhalin in the Russian Far East, right? So I know a fair bit about Russian.
We will ask you about that later on.
Politics and economics at that point in time, because it was linked to how oil and gas, underpins a lot of the decisions and how things work, right? So I decided to join the program because it was 3 jobs in 3 years. I spent a year working in an operational environment. My first job was in customer servicing. So I was always on the phone trying to problem solve, trying to get things moving between the supply depots and also the gantries and trucks, shipping fuel around.
In very cold weather, right? Basically.
In the UK, so it's still okay.
You're doing
from the UK.
Okay.
And then my second job, I was in the carbon trading space. So that was 2008, right? 14 years ago. And the European Union emissions trading scheme was the first in the world at scale. And there were not that many people involved in the space. So if you want, we can also delve deeper into, market design, right? And how do you essentially add on free market economics to price carbon in order to abate and the pitfalls of it. Because everything went downhill during the global financial crisis, right? When the whole economy of the world at that point in time was crashing down, right? And you have to worry about feeding your
07, 08, right?
07, 08, right? You have to worry about feeding your own citizens, or you want to subsidize, carbon abatement projects in third world countries, right? So that becomes
the Chinese are looking and say, see?
It becomes a political question as well. Then my third role, I was in risk management, and I was on my way towards gearing myself into, an energy trading career route. Right, becoming an oil or gas trader or electricity trader, and then subsequently, after my fourth role in risk management, I didn't really like that job, right? Because I was running spreadsheets every day, but it taught me things like how do you actually keep risk under control, right? I transitioned into management consulting with Bain & Company.
Yes, what's it like? Yeah.
So that was a good induction into a certain way of working, as well as to understand, what do management consultants really do? Change management, project management, looking into due diligences, right? Trying to use data to support some business decisions.
That's right.
But 2.5 years of it for me was enough, because that wasn't really what was exciting for me.
Really?
Yeah. I think for a few reasons. Number one, I rather get into things where you decide and then you see the results right away, rather than creating slides and stakeholder management, engagement, buy-in, whiteboarding, exercises, but
then nothing.
Then you hope that the other side would implement, right?
Right.
So that's one
You
part
want
of
the feedback. Basically, you want the feedback on your ideas or your theories about the world, essentially.
Not just that, I wanted to be the guy making the decision.
I see. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Not the guy trying to propose or to rubber stamp or to give something on paper, right? But rather, understanding the situation and deciding, committing, executing, right? And having a P&L responsibility in a certain way, right?
That's very interesting. If you don't mind me digging deeper, Warren, because most consultants on one side of the story don't like the implementation, they don't like the operational work, they like big picture, they don't like to get into the trenches, as they speak. But in your case, what I'm hearing is that you rather be in the trenches or command of the trenches. What do you think propelled you to have that kind of interest? Was it because that a lot of the ideas that you were proposing in Bain wasn't getting adopted? Was that the trigger, or was there something else?
I wouldn't say that. Plus, when I was still at Bain, I was relatively junior anyway. Right. So most of the time, you have the senior partners who will be schmoozing around and giving a strategic advice to the Fortune 500 companies. But even then, I also realized when it comes to advice, right, you don't have to rely on 100 pages decks, right? Because you've got the experience, you speak with the authority, right? Sometimes it's just a matter of having a discussion over an armchair. So look, this is what you have to do, right? I think you should stick to that. You should do this. You should do that. And these are the reasons why. This is what my experience is telling me. I've done it before. I've seen it across 100 different cases, right? And just like how real deals are done,
yes,
right, through private conversations, one-on-one conversations, you advise and you get things moving. Right, the rest is just justification or paperwork to try to justify a decision.
Correct.
You want to get a deal done is through a handshake, right? Through an understanding, through mutual considerations, right? So that's how the real world essentially works lah, right? So that's the one part, and I think at the end of it, it really depends on the personality, on who are you as a person and what drives you as a person.
100%.
Yeah, whether it's the theoretical part, the intellectual part, you want to think about it. But if you want to think about intellectual part, there are many other things which are a lot more intellectual as well.
A lot more other things.
The pricing of derivatives using a Black-Scholes model, for example, right?
Oh, yes.
Or how do you measure the volatility? You're looking at the volatility map of an options curve, right? So all these things are mathematically challenging, right? Through stochastics or blah, blah, right? So
physics,
Yeah, physics, exactly, right? Or how do you actually shoot a rocket, right? Or launch it to space, right? Or whatever those SpaceX guys are going. So it really depends on what drives a person. In my particular case, what motivated me, what interested me more was essentially I suppose trying to grow a business, deciding on it, reacting to the dynamic market, right? And stringing things together in order to factor that in, right? But please don't get me wrong. I have a lot of respect for many management consultants, right? And the work they do.
Then some of them will be your friends, right?
Yeah, some of them are my friends, and I learned a lot during my days at Bain. I could travel in business class, stay in 5-star hotels, but after a while, the novelty wears off, right? The more important is actually the people that you meet, and most of them don't stay on as management consultants anyway.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
I've got many of my Bain colleagues from around the same cohort as me, right? Who went on to. I was in London, right? So one went on to form UK's largest flower delivery company. One went on to form UK's one of the UK's largest independent electricity provider.
Wow.
Right, but then it went under with the current volatility, right? You have many different things doing different things, right? I think it's the benefit is having access to a certain group of people where they have very very interest and they're driven, they're smart people, and they're generally nice people as well. Right.
That's right.
So, for example, when I was at Bain, I was also working on a startup of my own, and I was also I took a 6-month sabbatical to work my own ad tech startup. Right?
Is it called a Fluent Future? Is that the
no?
one?
That was during my days at BP. Okay. I was working on another thing called Guru app, and because of my Bain connection, right, I actually had a one-on-one session with Gordon Brown. Who had, at that point in time had just stepped down being the Prime Minister of the UK. So I went to meet him at the House of Commons in his office, and then he subsequently invited me to join a brainstorming session on education tech as a whole.
Okay.
Right. And he even offered me a job at the UN because at that point in time was the UN special envoy for
the UK
children's education. Right.
I see.
In war zones or conflict zones. Right. But at that point in time, I told him, look, I just want to make my money first, right? So I think the reason why I wanted to bring this up is sometimes when you open yourself to possibilities and you're in an environment where you have interesting people around, right? And I've seen the corollaries, whether it was during my days at oil and gas, or whether it's during my days in carbon trading, or whether it was during my days at Bain, or whether it's during my days in startup. Right? As long as you're a nice person, you can network your way around, but you network because you add something back to the community and the community gets something from you as well, right? But you don't act in a calculative manner, you don't act with the intention that you take more, and you really genuinely want to build up the sum of parts. Yeah. Right? In general, sometimes the doors that open up would be kind of like I suppose more rewarding than otherwise, expected, right? So
pay it forward. You pay it forward.
Pay forward without consciously paying forward.
Yes, exactly. Pay forward without consciously, without expecting anything in return. Actually.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect anything from the Austrian session, and then I met a cool guy like yourself, right? And one thing led to another, right? And then I got a free trip to Austria as well after that, or before that, I can't remember exactly, right? So all these things, tend to be linked, right?
Right.
I know there's a no swearing policy, but there's always a saying, right? Don't be an asshole, right? Yeah. Because the writing is at the back of your shit.
That's right.
So it really depends on how a person sees you, and whether you're a likable person, whether you can add value, whether you offer genuine thoughts, whether you offer something constructive to a relationship, right? And how does it essentially build it up over time?
Right. So at your time of Bain, did you already start doing entrepreneurial work already on the side?
So my whole involvement with, let's say, learning about tech or doing something techy it came from my days at BP, right? So I was helping out a friend's startup who was also a BP employee, right? He was trying to build a social network for language exchange. So I can teach you Mandarin, you can teach me Spanish, etc., etc. I was doing a bit of graduate recruitment for BP, so I was running trading games over at Imperial College. I was the tag, right? Because I volunteered myself for it, and it was a way for me to teach myself, public speaking and presenting to 300, 400 people. And I got my friend to help out, and he told me about a side project, and I started helping out during the night and evenings. And there was where I learned how to outsource. I learned about SQL tables. I learned about managing, let's say developers, outsourcing. To a place like Romania and all around the world. So again, back to that point, right? Once more door opens, and then through serendipity, more doors will open up.
Yeah.
Right? With that, I was able to do another startup, and then that evolved into ed tech. And with that, I got myself into somehow landed into Magic, which is a government agency looking into startups. And then with that also somehow led me to the current role that I'm in. Per se, right? So doors open up, in a connected way.
Yeah.
Sometimes without you consciously trying to push for it, but as long as you have a destination in mind,
That's right.
right? Then at least the boat would get steered subconsciously in a certain direction.
Yeah, I think you raised a good point because I think there are a lot of people who, people we work with and also sometimes friends and family is that they want to get everything figured out, right?
Yeah.
And sort of like they have this blueprint and this master plan to achieve something. And yet what you're describing to me, at least in your experience, is that you can only know where you are and where you want to go. And everything in between, it's almost very difficult to figure out. Did I characterize that correctly?
You can never fully figure everything out,
Yeah.
right? Because there are so many exogenous factors, right, beyond your control, right? The question is more about how do you actually create a framework to be able to react positively or negatively towards it, right? More importantly, how do you react against adversity, right? And to create more options, and you commit to a certain path and you steer yourself towards it. So I do agree. Most of the time, the highly successful people that I see, they are focused, right? But on the other hand, they are also humble enough and cognizant enough of the fact that you cannot control everything.
That's right.
You make the most out of it, right? And the most humble people that I know who are successful, will also always say, right? It depends a lot on luck. Even though there's a lot of grit, right? A lot of hard work, a lot of foundation. But people always say, there's a huge amount of luck involved as well.
Yeah.
But the harder you work, the luckier you get too.
Yeah. So Warren, peeling back a little bit on that, when people are faced with adversity and all that, can you share with us maybe some secrets of how you develop your framework and how do you refine it over time? I'm pretty sure you had a framework that worked for you in your 20s, and then it has probably evolved into something better in your 30s and 40s. How do you get started, and probably how do you sharpen it as you go forward, a framework?
Well, of course, how one wields the world will change with the passage of time, right? You get hopefully more mature, right? And you have more knowledge, and your risk parameters will change as well, right? And I think the other things also, to a certain extent, you learn to manage your own expectations too.
Oh, yes.
Right. No, I mean, when you're young, I say, I want to be the president of the United States, right? Or I want to be the prime minister, right? I want to be Elon Musk. It's okay to have those kind of lofty dreams, but as you progress older and older, you kind of realize, maybe some things are just beyond the reach, right? And this is just reality, right?
Yeah.
Managing expectations and knowing how to cater towards it, but still knowing exactly what is it that you want at a particular point in time, and on a forward-looking basis, right? What else can you do based on what you have? Right.
Yeah.
So, how has the framework changed? For me, it's the one thing that constantly remains is you must always have a sense of direction. Yeah. What is it that you want? What is it that you do not want?
Right.
Okay, both are equally important, right? What's
Yep.
it that you want? At least you will tend to move in a certain direction. Directions can change, right? What you want can also change because your priorities will change, right? When you have
Yes.
kids, when you get married, when you meet someone, when you have a certain job, right? Or when you discover religion or philosophy or a hobby, right? Or something that you really enjoy, like mountaineering or mountain biking or painting, right? So priorities can change, right? But what you do not want and what you do not like is also very important because then you don't have to waste time on agenda, waste time on people, waste time on resources, waste time on distractions, right? And learning how to say no is also another part of making sure that you can stay true to a path, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that has been always constant in my mind is always be open to possibilities, right? I think regardless of adverse conditions, right? When things look hopeless, and sometimes things do look hopeless, right? There's always still the glimmer, right, or the opening where the harder you try, the more possibilities you can open up.
I have to ask now, was there a situation in your life where something like that happened, where you keep going on? And in reverse as well, were there situations where you were not open to possibilities and you missed things out?
I think something like this essentially hinges on your worldview, right? Which to a certain extent, part of it could be nurtured, but a big part of it is really nature.
That okay, that's
Where maybe it's genetics, maybe it's just biological, right? Maybe it's how your brains are, your brain is wired in terms of how optimistic you are as a person, right? The optimism, right? The thirst for, or the curiosity for knowledge, right? The willingness to take action, or the inspiration to spur you to take action, right? So I think a lot of these things are probably ingrained deeply in us.
Yeah.
You can sharpen it, you can accentuate, or you can diminish it, right? With nurture, of course, right? But a lot of it, when it comes to your internal personality, I think you are born with it.
What would you say for yourself, nature-wise, almost with a high degree of certainty that you have it?
For me, I think from a relatively young age, I recognized that there was always a sense of curiosity, right? Curiosity without a real primary reason why, right?
For its sake, its own sake.
For its own sake, right? Why do I enjoy reading about certain things? Why do I enjoy exploring about certain things, right? And what was the benefit of it, or what was the disbenefit of it, right? Sometimes I go down a certain path and where the knowledge in hindsight doesn't really mean much, right? It doesn't add any value to my day-to-day life, but there's still the interest in it, right? And different people will have different interests, of course, right? But I think that there was the understanding of curiosity. That was a driver in me. Second thing is I suppose it's ingrained upon me that or I naturally enjoy working. For me, work doesn't really feel like work because I enjoy it, right? So it becomes kind of like a little bit of a habit because for me, I suppose the principal motivating driver is the impact I could make. Right, I decide on this. I open up this door and I push it through with the help of this and that resource or that person, and overall it results in a benefit not just to myself but for people around me or people I wanted to I suppose influence or cast a positive impact. Right. So the impact is the principal driver in terms of why I do enjoy working.
I have so many more questions on this, and I know John has as well, but we have to move on. We haven't reached magic yet. But actually before that, right, I was looking through your profile, and there's this very interesting thing which you ran for nearly 6 years, which is Warren's Big Ideas.
Okay.
What is that?
But basically, it's just an accumulation of all the field ideas that I've had, if you think about it. Right?
Okay.
So I did an online dating app with a friend. I did an education tech social network.
Okay.
I also had a children's books platform called Amazing Fables, right? And we were selling customized children's books. right? But every single failure that I've had taught me something that allows me to take on the next step and accumulate everything together, right? Maybe sometimes you say, all these experiences that you go through could create a self-selective bias. Because I've gone it before, I tried it before, it doesn't work, right? It limits my own possibilities, right? But on the other hand, it also gives me a more calibrated view on what's possible and why it didn't work. Why did it work, right? And if I want to try something else, what are things to avoid, as an example, right? So, in my case, let's say, for example, the children's books business called Amazing Fables, right? In theory, it sounded great. I didn't have to spend too much capex. Okay, it could be operationalized on a dropshipping basis, meaning that you customize the book, it gets sent over to a printer, they print, they send it. I don't have to do too much, right? The margins were there in theory. After factoring, shipping, and then also printing, and then it could scale, right? But the issue at that point in time, after executing, and it could scale because it was content. It was content based. You create a piece of content, you just let it be, right? Then your gross margin becomes for the content piece, becomes very, very high. But what I learned also, I don't want to get into this kind of operational stuff anymore in terms of e-commerce fulfillment across too many stakeholders.
That's not in your genes,
that's not in my genes. Not. I think it's not that it's not in my genes. It's a challenging business model.
I see.
It's a challenging business model because, you have too many different variables, and then with COVID, right?
Yes.
You have to rely on printer. You have to rely on shipping. Things get lost in shipping. You have taxation. When it comes to cross-border shipping as well. And when it's consumer-centric stuff, and then it's the basket size is not that high, and it's more of a nice to have. There are challenges in terms of repeat orders, etc., right? So that has also informed me on the kind of business models that I want to get involved in, and the kind of business models that I don't want to get involved in.
So I have to ask you about the dating apps, because I was a heavy user of dating apps. So why do you think that didn't? I love to ask you why all of these ideas didn't work out. But we have to move on to magic, right? But I have to ask with regards to the dating app. Why do you think it didn't work out?
Okay, so I can give you a very clear explanation, right? And I understand a lot about the dating apps, right? Because we look through every single thing. So when my friend and I were starting the dating platform, I wouldn't call it an application at that point in time, right? Because smartphones were just getting launched.
Yes.
Still early on, right?
So iPhone 2, iPhone 3 kind of era. Right?
Even before that, I think it's still a web. Mobile web, or just a 3G type of evolution, right? So it was at the point when Match.com and eHarmony was still the norms, right? And then you had the second generation dating platforms like Zoosk, OkCupid just about to come out, right, at that point in time.
It's pre-Tinder, right?
Pre-Tinder, right? We started about a year or two pre-Tinder. So it was still web-based, but you had tablets ready. No, you had tablets, you can view things. And we were trying to do things on a synchronous manner, meaning that both parties need to be online at the same time.
Oh.
All right. So you see, therein lies the problem of market design. Right, you need sufficient supply and demand, or two sides, and then they need to be online at the same time. And we were basing on the premise of chatting live, right? So think about it as MIRC, but it's something richer to essentially spur the conversation, right? And when Tinder came along, I realized immediately, there is a problem fundamentally with regards to the market design, because dating apps work on two principles, right? And then you have other factors, right? One is it has to be, easy to use and asynchronous, meaning that you don't have to be constantly on, right? But as long as there's a match or whatsoever, that's the beauty of Tinder, right? Then you have a choice to reply or exchange, right? Second thing is that the reality is with dating apps in general is you can forget a lot about the data, the details, right? The principal driver, 70-80% of it is actually about the looks.
100%.
Right. This is just the reality of it.
Right? Yes, that's right.
So Tinder started off as a hookup app, right?
Some would say still is.
Still is, right? But essentially, the thing that pulls you there is actually the looks, right? First. And then after that, you delve deeper into, different attributes, what's the percentage match. So the percentage of people who are looking for serious matches, which we were trying to cater to, is actually a very, very small percentage of it. Because the vast majority of use cases of dating apps in general is that, it's really satisfied by the fact that, 70-80% of the weightage goes into how you present yourself in your profile picture, right? How attractive you make yourself look, right?
Yeah.
We realized then I just killed the project and I pivoted into something else. So I went to learning platform. So I built an LMS, learning management system. I also built a series of 50 over education apps at that point in time, which you could use to revise for your SPM subjects or A-level subjects or O-level subjects.
This was pre-Udemy days, I guess.
Around the same time, but the smartphones were just beginning to become mainstream, right?
I see.
But at that point in time, kids didn't really have their own smartphones yet. Because it was still the first generation or second generation that not enough hand-me-down devices were getting passed down yet.
I see.
Right? Because at that point in time, you don't buy kids a new smartphone, right? You give them your old ones, right? But nonetheless, I had 60,000 installs for my SPM Sejarah app as an example, right? But then the problem with that was the struggle of monetization. How could I essentially get money of it, especially when it comes to ad tech? So I also understand the difficulties when it comes to education tech as a whole, right? Who's going to pay the money? The students, the teachers, students, the parents, the teachers, the schools, the districts, the government, right? Who pays for it?
Yeah. Who foots the bill?
And where's the size of the market at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Right. The multi-billion-dollar industry in Malaysia alone, right, wasn't really in the education apps itself, but rather in private tuition.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. This is reality.
Yes.
We all grew up with tuition, right? How much we spend a few hundred ringgit a month on tuition. And most kids still spend, especially when it comes to urban environments.
That's right.
Yeah, middle class and above, right? Everybody pays for tuition. So that's the real multi-billion-dollar business, even within a relatively small market in Malaysia alone.
Yeah, and of course, the number of SPM students will diminish over time as population decline, right? Would you say, was that the calculation you guys were making?
No, that wasn't the case, right? When I went to EdTech, I could see that at the end of it, right, the markets will gravitate towards private top-up tuition, just like what happened in China, or test preparation. Right, test prep, talk about Kaplan's and the rest, right? Because look, so my mistake at that point in time was I assumed that most of the kids would study. Right? But the reality is that those who really study will be 5-10% of the market. Right?
Very small,
very small, right? Yeah, those who really want to revise on top, right? So the question is, which market do you target again? How do you try to hit most of the larger segments?
Right, John. I know you have a question, right?
Yeah, even I was just wanting to, just add on to what Warren was saying about targeting the market, because I was just pulling up the numbers while Warren was talking about Sespadi, one of the largest publishers in Malaysia, and even they are struggling because how many people buy books just to get the results they want, and you rightly pointed out providers like Kaplan, but the books are only valuable if the tuition teacher recommends it. I thought of it. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
That's one part. I mean, if you think about it, right? Who makes the most money? The tuition teachers or Sespadi itself?
The tuition teachers are
look, you want to buy a book, right? $30, $10, right?
Yeah.
How much does the tuition teacher charge?
Yeah.
$100 a month.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
the value creation and accrual actually goes into the services sector. Right, rather than just the tools. I mean, I've met the operators of Sespadi and Pelangi before during my Guru app days, right? So I understand the business, at least from the outside in view, and if you compare against where the vast majority of the value creation or accrual, right, really is into sort of the revenue streams, right? It's actually not in the business of publishing, but rather in the business of servicing, right? Or in the business of, if you know somebody, you make you launch a big project, you get the government to pay for it,
Oh, yeah.
Okay, right.
So
Like the Yes program, no? The broadband rollout and all that.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know too much about such projects, so I will refrain from commenting on things that I'm not that familiar about.
So
Yeah, okay.
speaking of the government, magic, right? The government, at least from the outside, are not known to be a very entrepreneurial type of people, and yet here we have government getting involved, right, in incubation and all that. What was it like being at Magic?
So I was at Magic about 7 years ago already, 8 years ago.
Yes.
Right? We were the pioneer bunch, and we ran a lot of programs. It was under Cheryl Yeo, who was the founding CEO. I was handling quite a lot of the core programs, the accelerator program, investor relations, education programs, etc. I would say, the intention or the intent from the government is there because you need to spur entrepreneurship as a way to, I suppose, inspire a sense of culture for people to be entrepreneurial. You also need to cultivate the next generation of SMBs, which then grow into large companies and provide employment and inject, externalities into the whole local economy. You also want to transition the economy into developing across the value chain, right? And you digitally empower the businesses as well as the ecosystem, and then you can upgrade your economy, right? The intention has always been there. It has been there for all these governments, right? Any government, right? It has been there for 50 years, 60 years, 30 years, 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, right? Because because there's the framework to always want to do it, right? Then the question is more about the execution.
Correct.
Right. Do you have the foundations right? Do you actually bring it into the real fruition, or is it gonna stay at the conceptual level, right? At a white paper level, at the budgetary announcement level, right? But what is the measurable outcome out of it, at the end of it, right? So I was saying, the intention was there, and the intention has always been there. The intention is still there, right? By and large, you have anecdotal examples and evidences that there were some success cases here and there, right? In any government program, there will always be examples that can be thrown in to support, right? The KPIs or the reports. But the government that I respect the most when it comes to running such programs is actually the Singaporean government, because when they say they want to do something, they think about it in the long term, and their execution is laser focused. All right, and you can see it bearing fruit over 20, 30 years, 20 years, 10 years, 5 years. From how they start off with the semiconductors to how they go into in the internet companies, and now fintech, and making it kind of like a tech or fintech hub, pulling companies together. And now we're not even talking about creating unicorns in Singapore. They are creating decacons. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
Employing thousands of people.
Yeah.
In an expensive country like Singapore.
Yes.
Right? Tell me, why can Singapore do it and not Malaysia? Why has Malaysia failed to do so? It's not because the intent isn't there. It's not because the concepts aren't there. Right? It's because of the execution.
So I'd like to peel deeper about this execution, Warren, because I obviously, and I'm trying to link it to the consulting days that you have. A lot of this ideation, you have this formulation of these strategies, but always when it comes to execution, that's where they struggle. Why is it a case of, if you trace it back to the roots, a case of our education system or our ecosystem within this environment that does not allow that kind of execution? Is it because of the drive? Because Silicon Valley didn't need some sort of an incubator. They had university incubators, fragmented kind of incubators, rather than a concentrated government want to do it. And here we have the full might of the government being there, and yet execution is still lacking, you see.
There are always efforts to execute, right? In general. But for me, it's a function of maybe a few things. One is whether or not there's the actual foresight and the vision that spans 5 years, 10 years, decades continuously, right? And you keep a sense of direction.
Right.
Right? Do we have that? Or in general, it's a series of discontinuous programs. They tend to be repeats of themselves, and sometimes you have to be politically expedient, right? Which to a certain extent, maybe it adds on, or maybe it detracts, right, from the outcome that you want to achieve.
What maybe rather than looking at the flaws of what Malaysia has, what can Malaysia learn from Singapore when they had kind of laser focus? Was it the duration of the key people running it was long? Was there also implementation of projects that were more long-term focused in nature?
I think I wouldn't really attribute to, let's say, the tenure of people, right? Maybe that's one element of it, but it's more about the tenure of the vision. What is your 20-year roadmap? What is your 30-year roadmap? Right? Singapore is really looking ahead and say, look, I want to make Singapore the crypto center of the world, the fintech center of the world. I want to make Singapore be a leader in robotics, right? In artificial intelligence. But when they say, I want to make Singapore a leader, they actually believe with conviction that they can make it a leader. Right? Whereas over here, we always say we want to make ourselves leaders, blah, 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 but it's mostly just writing on paper, right? Because you tell me, right, in which particular industries have Malaysia made ourselves leaders? There's the palm oil industry, that's mostly private sector driven, right? Maybe
Semiconductor.
Semiconductor, it's, but that you can also say it's through the good graces of Intel.
Correct.
Right? On the other hand, maybe Islamic financing, okay, with a relatively stable regulatory framework, etc., right? But when it comes to the new economies, right, I've not seen anything where they say, I want to make Malaysia the world leader when it comes to electric vehicles, right? Or at least have a world-class industry in that space. Right? You might get some investors coming in through Maida or through Meaty, coming to set up operations over here. But again, and you have a lot of very, very nice slide decks, right? And reports from McKinsey or the Boston Consulting Group, right? Or any of these consulting companies as a whole, right? But the key thing is that the fortitude to be able to see it through, and the fortitude to be able to dedicate the right amount of resources. Singapore is willing to bet billions of dollars because they know, right? If you build an economy, it's going to be worth a few $100 billion to the Singaporean economy. Right? Whereas over here, you and I, we're having a conversation about magic right now, right?
Yeah.
And that operational OPEX a single year is just 50 million ringgit at that point in time. Right? So you compare against, the skill that's required and why you need that kind of skill.
Yeah.
Right? The kind of decisions that you need to make. Why would Singapore actively go out there to look for the Anthony Tans or the Forrest Lees and the CZs of Binance to move over to Singapore? Do you see Malaysia doing such things?
Nope.
Or having the political capital to do such things, right? Or the continuity, just looking at it from big picture, right? The answer is no, right? Even the MM2H program, right? With COVID, has its own challenges, right? Yeah. So it's the fortitude, the vision, and also the willingness and the backbone to really push it through.
Yeah.
And I think, with regards to that, that's probably where the Lee Kuan Yew spirit came in Singapore. Here you have the Marty spirit, we tried with Proton, you tried with Perwaja, at least there were mega projects, there were bets, right? Whether or not some pan out, some didn't pan out, at least there's the kind of, I want to build a heavy industry for Malaysia.
There's at least a vision.
There's a vision, right? Because I want to build an industry, right? It could fail, right? But if it works, the industry will have spillover effects. I'm going to create a few 100,000 engineers, and it has it could create an entire supply chain whatsoever. Now you tell me, where is this kind of a vision over the past 20 years? Have
Actually, by you saying that, Warren, it's so funny. I just read something yesterday that if you've read, Najib actually came out with a statement saying that please make sure Sapura Energy doesn't go bankrupt because you'll lose 4,500 jobs. So in a way, it's kind of a contrast. In a way, it is the government needs to put crutches on the industry they were trying to create a high industry, and here we have to bail them out. Instead, rather than you put in certain money, you put in a bet, and it grows the industry itself, and it brings in money. This is the opposite, So try to create an industry, and you pour more money inside.
Yeah, I don't fully believe in bailouts. Sometimes bailouts are unavoidable, right? Especially when it comes to national interests or whatsoever, right? But on the other hand, there's also the issue of moral hazard.
Oh yes,
right.
Oh yes.
You can build companies, right, or industries. Sometimes things don't work out, and you need to be comfortable with that risk.
Yes.
If it dies, right? But you have spillover effects, right?
Yes.
The fact that Nokia died in Finland doesn't mean that there were no baby Nokias that came out of the whole wreckage. Some of the world-class gaming companies in the mobile space are actually Finnish.
Yes.
Right. Singapore, so it had High-Flux, Darling, right? Water treatment. Right,
correct.
And I think the founder was ex-Malaysian as well.
Yeah,
right?
Correct. The latest,
But it went down. So be it, right?
Yeah, so be it.
You have one that goes down, but you have 10 that succeeds.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Rather, it should kind of like let capitalism takes its force, rather than trying to weave or trying to put it on crutches or whatsoever. Because as I was reflecting as you said that, about taking big bets and then seeing the returns versus, taking big bets and then putting more money. That's where the contrast.
You must know when to cut your losses, right? Of course, different countries will have their own comparative advantages, right, and relative advantages. But back to the point about ecosystem, right? I think the reason why Singapore is able to do it in comparison to many other governments out there, I'm not singling out Malaysia. I'm just talking about in general.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It's because of the planning, because of the fortitude, because of the resources they're willing to place into it, and because of the discipline. Right, and the willingness to decide based on a longer term true north of the country itself.
Here's my question to you then, Warren. Should that be a government sector initiative, or private sector initiative, or a partnership, in your opinion?
I mean, most countries have their PPPs, private sector, partnerships or whatsoever, right? If you look at China, a lot of it was actually driven by the SOEs, which are also inefficient. But nonetheless, you cannot argue against the scale at which they grow the economy, right?
Correct.
Whether or not it's over leverage or the different disincentives, right? They have their own problems and challenges, right? Even companies like I think Lenovo, etc. They all had their ties into government research at one point in time, right?
Yes.
Per se, right? But that they were able to create an industry, right? They were able to create a private sector. They were able to create a supply chain, and then through government subsidies first or whatsoever, and then after that you throw it open to the competition, and there's internal competition because in China everything is so competitive.
Correct.
Right? And the competitiveness is the one that spurs excellence.
Precisely.
Yeah, because the Singaporean community and the Singaporean culture is a lot more competitive by design. Right, again, based on the Lee Kuan Yew philosophy. Right?
Correct.
It creates people who are hardier, and they know that it's a dog eat dog world, right? You have its own stresses, right? But because if you want to rise to the top, it spurs the excellence, and ultimately, the those who survive, right? The Spartans, like 300 Spartans, or whatever, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Are the ones who ultimately be driving a big part of the possibilities of creating new stuff. Right, and you need to have the kind of meritocratic excellence to a certain extent.
Spot on. Yeah,
That's great. I think this will be my last question about this before we move on to what you're working on right now. And building on John's question, right? do you think, given sort of the instability of politics in Malaysia, because I believe that when you compare two countries, right, the big difference is that especially in this period of our political history, it is the most unstable. Do you think that it's realistic to expect the government to have what you say, the vision, the discipline, and all that? And do you think really it's just kind of Malaysians just doing it themselves?
My gut feel is that over the next 20 years, 30 years, we just have to do it ourselves,
Fantastic,
right? And that should be the default view for anybody across any country anyway.
Yeah.
Right? The government should be seen as an enabler.
Get out of the way.
So not say get out of the way, like when there are programs or resources, they extend a helping hand, they give tax breaks, all these things they're helpful. You use it as a way to really add on to your repertoire of tools to build something. Right? Because your job as an entrepreneur, as an executive, as a CEO, is to make the most out of the resources that you can get access to, whether we're talking about private sector or the public sector. Right? It doesn't matter. Right? So the key things are, you have to operate independently to survive regardless of whoever's in power. Right? But my own personal philosophy is, it's always better to be able to build a business which is not dependent on whoever's in power as well.
That's right. That's right. So there is more resilience into the business and
more
rather than grants.
More resilience in the business, and at the end of it, business, politics, politics. Of course, sometimes you will say big business mixes with big politics, right? in one country or another, right? And in most countries in general, the government is still the largest spender when it comes to capex or direct injection of stimulus. Right?
Correct.
Into the whole thing, right? But for me, my own personal philosophy is, try to build something, that's independent of the government. But if there's the opportunity to work with them, then work with them, right? But it shouldn't be really an us versus them kind of thing.
Correct.
It needs to go hand in hand. But to answer your question, MJ, with regards to what the view is going to be, I would suggest that learn. I mean, in general, learn how to operate independent of the government. Right? And make the most of whatever you have right now.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit now about. Actually, John, do you have any more questions on this?
No. Go.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit now about what you're working on, which is designs.ai and of course INMAGINE. So I'm not sure if there are two companies that are cohesive, but I'll let you do the explaining.
Got it. Right. So right now I'm the interim group CEO of INMAGINE. INMAGINE is one of the world's leading creative ecosystems and one of the larger internet companies built up here in Malaysia. Operationally we're based in Kelana Jaya, but our business is truly global in the sense that most of our revenues are from US, Europe, and the rest of APAC, right? Which it will consist of Japan, Korea, Taiwan, China, and Australasia. We have a few business units under INMAGINE. We have 123RF, which is a marketplace of content, stock content that you use for your presentations, for your footage files, and et cetera, et cetera. We have Pixlr, which is one of the world's most popular web-based photo editors and graphic editors. So if you have to Google Photoshop online, you come across pixlr.com, where principally it's used by more than 10 million users on a monthly basis. We also have designs.ai, which is an AI-powered content creation platform. But our ultimate goal with regards to the whole ecosystem is really to empower anybody to be able to create stuff in a smarter, faster, and easier way, making design accessible to all, right? So the market that we are playing in is the same kind of market as what Adobe is playing in, or what Canva is playing in, right? Or what Shutterstock or Getty Images are playing in.
That's right.
Right? It's a huge market. If you refer to the Adobe strategy deck, it's roughly about $40 billion a year, right? Adobe sells $9 billion a year of Adobe Creative Cloud, right? Which would be a Photoshop or Illustrator or Premiere, which Jonathan will be using to actually edit, the videos. Right, and then you've got Canva, right, where the revenues are approaching $1 billion a year right now.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. We use it as well for our
exactly.
posts,
Then you should definitely try Pixlr too. It's free to use.
I will definitely try it out now.
Right. So we're in that space, right? So it's you can call it a digital ecosystem, right, in the creative space. We're completely bootstrapped. We have nearly 300 employees globally. It's founded by a husband and wife team, Andy and Stephanie Sid, whom we have a lot of huge respect for. And now, the next phase of our evolution is what's next for us, right? How do we grow to the next level? Which are the new business models we need to look into? How do we essentially plan for our next step of corporate strategy, right?
Right. I have to ask, because you're going up against, I'm not sure if that's the right word to use, but, you seem to be going up against some of these big guys, right? You use Getty Images. I use it as well. Whether it's Canva, whether it's Adobe. Like, how do you decide to either compete or to operate alongside these big giants in the field?
Okay, it's a question of strategy. It's a question of trying to make the most of the resources, or whether we're talking about financial, or we're talking about people, or whether we're talking about just time, right? To fit in. Of course, when you have a lot more money, you can do a lot more things, right? So in our particular case, we've been quite economical in terms of how we deploy our resources, right? We'll be very careful. We will bootstrap all the while. We balance between profitability and investing into CapEx as well as the required OpEx for growth. I think the way to answer the question really is prioritization,
right?
And identify again what is the true north, and act with a certain conviction, right? I wouldn't say we are truly there yet. Every business at its different phase would have different challenges, right? But the foundation is there. The foundation has taken 20 years to build, right? Over time, from the base of where we are, the customer base, to the acquisitions that we've made, to the people that we've recruited, to the roadmap that we want to achieve, to the network that we have built. Right, right now, the industry is not that big, right? The peers that I speak to will be the equivalents of the CEO of Getty or Envato, or the founders of Canva and the likes, right? So the question is, how can we build something bigger from where we are right now?
So what is the true north, I guess?
Well, we will hope to build a large multi-billion-dollar business over time, right? We've got the raw components over there across our whole ecosystem. More than 25 million users on a monthly basis. And the key thing is, how do we actually activate the monetization in order to draw in more revenues as a part of a share, right? The whole market, as I mentioned, is about $40 billion right now, right? We don't have 2 or 3% of the revenues of the potential. Far from it, right? Far from it. But we have 2 or 3% of the traffic.
Okay.
Right. So the question is, how do we essentially try to build on the foundation that we have and chart a path across, right? That's why, one of the things that we are looking at is also, to do a fundraising route. Because, when you bootstrap and you're spending your own money, balancing between profitability and CapEx and OpEx investments, and also marketing, right? It's difficult to fight the game at scale when you have much well-funded competitors.
Yeah. On this alone, I probably has two questions. The first one with regards to, a lot of times this stock images and all that is really about somewhat of the IP, and in somewhat, would that be a hindrance factor for you guys because of the market that you are in? I mean, where the business is based in Malaysia versus the guys who are outside. Is that a disadvantage for you? If it's not, why? If it is, why? Second question is with regards to talent pool and the ecosystem around here. Is that something going forward is a struggle for you guys, or do you find it easy because of the new wave of people can work remotely and all that kind of thing to actually grow this? Because I think competition doesn't just look at capital like what you've mentioned. I do agree it plays a very big part, but capital, if you have all the capital in the world, but you can't find the right talent to want to work here and all that kind of thing, it's also a struggle. Or do correct me if I'm wrong, from your perspective.
Okay, so you were talking about advantages and disadvantages of operating out here, right? For a global internet company. Question. So there are two sides to the whole thing, right? One is that, of course, the fact that we are here, we are not in the US, makes a big difference. In comparison to, let's say, a player like Shutterstock or Getty, they can walk down Madison, Avenue, right, in New York, and speak to all the 4A agencies and get this large internet companies to their customers, right, and sell at enterprise level, right?
Yeah.
The market depth, the market access, the to a certain extent, maybe some parts of the credibility plays a role. But on the other hand, there's also the advantage of operating in a lower cost environment like Malaysia. Right, where salaries are, a quarter or a third in comparison to a higher cost country. So pros and cons, right? It really depends. But I think technology companies are also a point where sometimes it's not about the volume of labor that you can throw at it, but the efficiency of the labor. Right? There's always a saying, one good engineer is better than 10 mediocre ones. Right? Because use technology to automate or to move things, right? So after a certain scale, right, the volume of labor doesn't play that much of an importance anymore. Hence the reason why you have humongously profitable companies, the likes of which have never been seen before, being built out of a country like the US, where things are so expensive. It doesn't matter if Google pays a few $100,000 for their engineers, because they make a few $100 billion in revenue a year.
Correct.
Right, with Microsoft, with Apple, with Amazon, right, and with Facebook, right. So it doesn't matter because they can afford to.
Yes.
Because the business models allow them to, the technology, the efficiency which they're able to act out of it, right, allows them to, and to hire the best. Right. So that's one part of it, right? And it segues into your second question on whether or not we can find the right talent. To some extent, yes, here and there, but even in Malaysia, it's very competitive. It's very competitive all around the world, right? You've got wonderful companies like Carsome and Grab, hiring, right, and they're well funded. I've got a lot of good friends who are a company like Carsome, et cetera, right? CoinGecko, is a fantastic company, that's doing great, right? We are doing okay as well. But again, when you bootstrap company and you are not as well funded as a well-funded venture-backed company, right? The ability and the flexibility that we can play with in terms of talent hiring and etc. is a little bit different. So we need to strike a balance between the value proposition that we offer to our employees. But there is one point where there is still a scarcity of talent. Here in Malaysia or in Singapore or in Thailand or Indonesia or wherever, right? Everybody wants the same limited pool that's not growing as fast as where the industries
demands
are growing into, right? Simply because there's a huge movement of digitalization and automation, and also moving to cloud and building new businesses, which require technical people.
It's also partially your fault, Warren. You didn't study as an engineer. I'm just kidding.
That's true. So but once you reach a certain stage, so you shouldn't be touching code yourself also, right? But in hindsight, yes. If there's any young people asking me, hey, I'm certain of what I want to do, what I can do, then the first thing I will ask is, are you good with math? And if you're good with math, you can go and study engineering first. You can still become an accountant later on. Right? Or you can be a business, right? Yeah, study a technical subject. Because the math will come in handy.
100%.
Yeah.
So I want to get your thoughts on managing a company with 300 employees, right? What's that like? The difficulties and challenges. We're a team of 7, right, John? And it's already like, hey, I don't think we need any more so far, right? But 300. How do you do it?
Nearly 300. I think different companies have different challenges. Different roles have different challenges as well. In my particular case, I'm someone who's 6 years into the company, and the founders are still around, and they've entrusted me to try to help to bring it to the next level. There on the other hand as well, we also have a good senior management team who, by and large, more experienced than me in this business, right? And they offer a wealth of their knowledge and the contribution, and it's also through their back-breaking labor, along with the founders that have built the company into what it is today, right? So in my particular case, it's more about what is the value add I can bring together, right? Instead of keeping status quo, that's not the case, right? But bring it to the next level with a different perspective, with different networks or different ways of thinking, whilst at the same time making the most out of what we have right now to prepare ourselves for the future, right? And to make something, at a bigger scale together.
Understood.
Nice.
Yeah. MJ, sorry, go ahead.
No. I know you have a question. That's why.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to link this to actually the magic and ecosystem that we've discussed earlier. Correct my perception if it's wrong. A lot of Malaysian entrepreneurs are very hardy. Obviously, you think that the Singaporeans, because of the ecosystem and the way it's set up, they're also very sturdy, very hardy. But in Malaysia, there's a lot of, for the lack of a better word, political incentives that may have marginalized certain parts of a society, and because of that, they have to strive even harder. Where I'm leading towards this is that despite all these somewhat negative connotations of Malaysian policies, you find companies like 123RF that grow. What do you think is the kind of like their perseverance formula to overcome all this? I mean, I'm pretty sure you've seen stones or curveballs being thrown at these entrepreneurs, and even in your days of magic, and yet they thrive. What do you think? Was there kind of like a common thing that they kept them going actually, or to overcome all these challenges actually?
I think, regardless of country or regardless of systems, right? Entrepreneurs in general are hardy people.
Yeah.
Right? Whether you're in the US or Singapore or Malaysia or Indonesia or India or Bangladesh or Egypt or Russia, right? Or UK or South Korea or Japan, right? Or China, it's all the same, right? You have to be hardy. You have to look at opportunities with a sense of optimism, and you have to be willing to take it. Of course, the level of access to different resources could vary country by country, right?
Yeah.
And depending on the industry that you're in as well, right? And I think you make do with the cards that you have, and with the cards that you have, you hope to then pyramid upwards to a better deck of cards.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure when you had your first batch of going over to Silicon Valley, correct me if I'm wrong, were you in a way envious of the ecosystem that they had compared to what we have here at the first glance, or was it like, okay, they have this, but we have our own strengths and traits within the ecosystem? Because I remember as the first cohort, you guys spent like 2 weeks in Stanford or something.
Yes. So you can be envious, or you can just make the most of what you have, right? I don't see the benefit of having envy in it, because it doesn't spur action, right? It makes no difference, right? But if you are envious, but you feel that you can make the most out of the resources there, and for your own agenda, then by all means go ahead.
Yeah.
Right. You need to set up a Singaporean company. You need to become Singaporean, because it's required for your business in order to grow it as big as Grab. Right. By all means. Right. If you want to build a global software company, you need to move to the US. By all means. Right. Or you can also still build large successful businesses like Carsama or Asia or Malaysia. Then by all means as well. Right. The key thing is, the litmus test is how do you decide based on what's suitable for your own individual requirements. On your own agenda, right?
Yes.
What are you trying to build exactly out of the different factors and different conditions that you have, right?
Yeah.
But your indirect question with regards to marginalization, etc. I mean, truth be told, right? This is the reality. It is a reality that in Malaysia, the social fabric of what we define as Malaysianness is defined through a racial lens because it's embedded with our political system.
That's
From
right.
the days of independence, rightfully or wrongly, and decisions were made, by the forefathers to structure in a certain way,
Yep.
right? To create an economy along a certain way. Sometimes not just for economic reasons, but for social stability reasons, right?
That's right.
Recalibration or a more equitable distribution of wealth, right? Transcending across different identities, right?
Yeah.
But I think the point that you I suppose I will raise over here is you make do with what you have, right? But you stay true to your agenda and you layer with you do whatever it takes to make sure that it helps to improve the situation or the ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah.
Right.
Point.
Yes.
Either you can or one can complain or gripe about it all the time, or one can learn how to operate independently of it.
Correct.
One can choose to abandon it. One can choose to operate within it. The choice is entirely up to you.
Yeah.
That makes
Great.
a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Probably one question with regards to the cultural nuance as well. So, of the 300 staff that you have, how many of them are actually Malaysians, and do you have any, in a way, non-Malaysians working in it?
Yeah.
And what is the culture that you have tried to build, and what would maybe the common cultural differences or nuances that I wouldn't use the word struggle, but trying to assimilate, put it this way.
Well, I mean, we run a global business, so definitely we need to have a global workforce, right? We've got offices in more than 30 over countries, be it partners or direct sales, right? And you do need people who understand the cultural context and the ability to push and also network and to sell, right? On the other hand, we also need people who do customer service and market development and also marketing, right? So I would say the split is probably 85% or 80, 85 or 90% Malaysian, and then 10, 15, 20% non-Malaysians. We try to inject a certain sense of cultural mixture into the whole mix, because at the end of it, having cultural diversity is more of a strength rather than a disadvantage, right? So I would disagree with the concept of assimilation, but rather I would phrase it in such a way that it's to integrate everybody together across a certain work culture. A culture of respect, a culture of tolerance, a culture of performance, a culture of accountability, but at the same time, a culture of making the most out of the different diversity that we have. Am I as diverse as I want it to be? The answer is no. Right? I've worked 10 years in London. London is very diverse.
Yeah.
Right? I spent time in Singapore, so Singapore is getting increasingly diverse. Right? These are all global cities and alpha cities where it's easier to hire foreigners, right? Because you need to have a mix of it in a globally present company like ours.
That's right.
Right. But unfortunately in Malaysia, instead of making it easier, it has become progressively more difficult to hire foreign talent. Right.
That was what I was alluding towards too, actually.
Yeah. So it is one of the counter arguments towards, how we can essentially build more. I suppose, the government has set a mandate. They want to build more unicorns, right? But, if we cannot bring in more foreigners because we need it to act as a base, as an ingredient or as a resource, right? A critical resource, technically and non-technically, in order to operate, a business at a global level, then it's counterintuitive, right? So therefore, you have different ministries and different policies which contradict each other to a certain extent.
That's right. I mean, I draw parallels to like Japan as a very homogeneous society. Even there, also recognize the need to bring in, external cultures to actually understand competitiveness in a global schema. No matter how homogeneous Japan is compared to us.
And they have to move, right? Because if you think about it, the last 20, 30 years of Japan, it has been a non-competitive economy.
Exactly.
Right, and it's the South Koreans that have taken over, shipbuilding, electronics, DRAM, smartphones, smart devices. Why is that the case? It's the ability to be able to adapt to what's required and to be more aggressive about it.
Yeah, great. One last question before I turn it over to MJ. If it's regards to perhaps the deck that you actually created on your LinkedIn, and I find it very interesting, is because it's actually business development based on relationships 101.
Okay, I think I must have written it about 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? Doing one of the public talks.
This for me, it was a bit I would say peculiar, because a lot of times people talk about business development as some sort of a relationship kind of thing, but you kind of like frame it up into something that's, I would say, applicable. And maybe first, why you felt the need to put this in? Was it a journal or something? Secondly, is that, have you seen it work, and what was the feedback mechanism that you received based on this actually?
So I think all the decks that I prepared on LinkedIn were essentially, the stuff that I had to prepare for presentations to a bunch of, let's say, uni kids or startup folks, right? Okay. So I was the only doing it for an event because, there was a teaching moment or experience sharing moment, right? And it requires a material, or whether it was a Founders Institute module, and they gave me a topic and I have to prepare something along those lines, right? So I wouldn't dare claim that, I'm full expert on those, but I can just layer with the experiences I've gone through in my own career or my own life, right? So I can't recall exactly what I've written on those slides, but I would suspect that, it's a lot about, building up the credibility, identifying who are the main stakeholders, how to actually create a win-win environment and a situation, and you deal with it constructively. You try to extract your pound of flesh, but on the other hand as well, you need to make sure the other side gets something in return. It's not about, the short-term transactional one-off thing, but rather, how can you essentially build up a relationship that will last for years because you build up a trust over time, right? So the industry or whichever industry that you are in, right, it's not as big as you think it is as well at a certain level, right? Especially when you're at the point where you're making decisions, really. Right.
Yes.
The CEOs will talk to the CEOs, the CFOs will talk to the CFOs, the CEOs will talk to the COOs, right? The VPs will talk to the VPs, and they sort of know each other, right? So the key things, build up your own branding, build up the visibility, build up the credibility, and start pyramiding upwards because you demonstrate your value. And people will take notice, right? And sometimes, the doors will open up, unexpectedly. Right? So I don't do a fantastic job in terms of posting on LinkedIn, to be honest with you, right? I don't post daily, I don't post weekly or whatsoever. But for anybody who's an aspiring, new joiner to the employment market, or someone who's just starting off, I would recommend, building your own visibility, because when you don't have a budget to market, right, you yourself can be the best marketer.
Oh yeah. Fantastic! I think this fantastic works for 20-year-olds, man. Yeah. MJ, back to you.
I have a lot of questions about, why you think, in your experience, startups don't do well. But before I go into that more general question, sticking with where you're at right now, I know you worked on an NFT project, right? So how does NFTs fit into what you're building with designs.ai and INMAGINE?
What INMAGINE core is content management, IP management. So we have 180 million stock content pieces within our platform. We also have tools which people use to create content, right? Pixlr or Vector that we have within the portfolio. And when it comes to NFTs, it's a way for folks or users to commit user ownership details or metadata onto the blockchain, where it's publicly verifiable, publicly trackable, and publicly identifiable. And therefore, it opens up more possibilities of new business models to be built on top. Right? In what shapes or what forms, they'll be linked to our core businesses right now. Things are still a little bit early on for us to test and engage. But on the other hand, so the reason why we got the NFTs will be a few things. One was to find additional revenue sources. Number two was actually to learn the industry by going into it. Number three was to build up the expertise so that we can layer on to our core products that we have. Right. So these are the three principal drivers. So it has been an interesting journey. It's been an exciting journey, right? On the other hand, crypto and NFTs, you have some fundamentals, but there's also a lot of hype.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes,
100%.
tons of it.
The booms and busts are driven by hype cycles as well, right? But nonetheless, structurally, there are new things, new revolutions, new use cases, new business models, right? They pyramid themselves upwards, or they don't look that evident at the early stages, but once it reaches a certain scale, then the business models make sense.
Yeah.
Right, just like with the Russian-Ukraine war, right? You literally, crypto is a lifesaver for those who are trying to transfer their life savings out.
Correct.
Or to run, right? Instead of having a gold chain or your diamond rings or whatsoever that you can pawn, right? Yeah, your ETH or your BTC will be the ones that actually helps you resettle in a new country, right? For many of the Ukrainians, as an example. So that's the reason why we got into NFTs, right?
Right. Okay. Now, going back to your experience looking at other startups and people seeking advice from you observing maybe friends or whoever, maybe former employees building companies, those that succeed and those that fail. What would you say are some of the things that you see very common that startups do that you think they should stop doing?
It's always easier said than done.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Let me lay down the theoretical parameters.
Okay.
You must have the right strategy.
Okay.
Your strategy is wrong, you go in a different direction.
Yeah.
All right. Or if you're not adaptable enough, right? Or you're too stubborn to be able to change. But sometimes, stubbornness has its own benefits because you don't give up. Right. So it's two ways to look at things, right? But you must have the right strategy. Right. If you know you're on the wrong path, do not be afraid to actually change instead of just going head on against the wall, right? And you crash into it and you die. Right? You must have the ability to execute. Sometimes, in the fog of war, right, amidst a quagmire of uncertainty or the morass of murkiness, right? How do you essentially find a way through? So you must be resourceful and adaptable enough to string up the ducks in a row and just get things done. Right? The things that you always have to be humble, right? But you must also be arrogant enough. Humble to listen and learn, but arrogant enough to also know that sometimes, not everything that you hear is the right decision for you. But you must have your own conviction. Right? And decide and act upon it. Right? Data is always used to help someone make informed tactical decisions or have a feedback loop. But true entrepreneurship is not dependent on data alone, right? Not just the quantitative data, but rather, the qualitative elements, the quantitative elements, you bring it all together, you see a path through, and then you decide, right? You have to have the courage to make the call. Right, and then the fifth thing is really about luck. Right, you could be too early, you could be too late. You have to get the Goldilocks window right.
Right.
Yeah. So all these elements, in theory, they all blend together. But of course, your out view in life, your own personality, the way you operate with people, the way you deal with people, the way you react to adversity or opportunity, right? The way you can bounce back, the way you can keep opening up new opportunities. All these things are factors into whether or not you can string these 4 or 5 factors together.
Wow. John, do you have any more questions? Because the next segment, I'm going to go on to more a completely different direction. So yeah, do you have any more questions there?
I do have one, because he gave the theoretical, actually when he mentioned the word theoretical, right? So in a way, what would be the practical side of things? I'm pretty sure you've seen startups that work successfully and they did not have all the ducks lined up. And I'm pretty sure you had seen startups that fail miserably with all the ducks lined up. So where, besides the theoretical part, what were the more practical side? Maybe an example, or if you can recall, you know.
Sometimes you give up too early. Sometimes you give up too late. Right. Sometimes you don't adapt enough. Sometimes you adapt too much. You have a whipsaw effect. Right. So there's no one size fits all answer. Right. It really depends on the situation, on the time, on the things which are available for you to be able to decide on at the particular point in time. Sometimes you're just plain unlucky, right?
Yeah.
What can you do about it?
But you know, to your point about luck, I think that so many people, especially entrepreneurs, believe that, you know, they have a vision, they're gonna put in the work, and with that combination, you know, in football, there's this technical term called the coincidence factor. That means they work so hard, they plan so much that luck is not even part of it. And you have rightly pointed out, I think that no matter how hard you work and no matter how smart you are, luck is massive, right? There's a role to play. So how you give advice to someone, right, who maybe don't believe in luck?
So I'll explain. The harder you work, the more opportunities to have more shots at the goal.
Right.
Even though the probability is the same, right? But you have more shots, right?
Yes.
So your absolute probability increases.
Yes.
Because it's a sequence of independent events, right?
Correct.
Or maybe not independent events, correlated events.
Yes.
Right? So the harder you work, you know, you launch one rocket and you fail, right? And you give up. Versus, you know, you launch 10 rockets, 9 fail and then 1 goes up, right? And that's what Elon Musk did.
Yeah.
Right? So the harder you work, the more you learn, the luckier you get. Because, you know, then it becomes more and more of the incident factor.
So how about people, right, who find it hard, like so there are different types of entrepreneurs, right? Some people are geared, right, towards just moving forward, right? But how about the people who did all they can, plan all they can, and then luck got involved? And to them, it's like, well, that's a failure. How do you pick guys like that up, you know?
You can't really pick guys like that up. They will pick
Really?
themselves up.
Okay.
Right.
And they can't.
They can't really, they can, right?
Right.
I mean, all those who have made it, right, you know, they've gone through booms and busts multiple times.
Yeah.
Right? Elon Musk himself, the richest guy in history ever.
Yeah.
Right? Has gone through the depths of depression, the likes of which we cannot even identify
Imagine.
with, you know. Right?
Yeah.
A grown-up man, as hardy as he is, to cry, right? And to work 18 hours, right? And not complain because, you know, the weight rides on his own shoulders, right? If it doesn't work 18 hours for 2 weeks, the whole company was going to go bust already.
Yeah.
Right? So the question is, how do you actually pick yourself up from all this? So it's the kind of grit, right? You know, reaching into your own inner self, right? And finding the inner fire to be able to come out from the cusp of defeat multiple times, not just once.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so now you know, I know you're someone with a lot of broad interests. So maybe we'll move on from, you know, entrepreneurship specifically and all that. I want to ask you a lot about your thoughts on history, right? I know you mentioned one book that left you an impression would be the history about Europe, but maybe let's talk about individuals, right? Who do you look to and admire in anyone history, and perhaps maybe someone you see yourself in?
Okay, I've only got 5 minutes because I have to go somewhere else. But never mind. I think this is a good question.
This will be a last question.
Yeah, let's just time it. It's fine. One particular person, I think it's hard for me to put. Right? If you ask me 15, 20 people who inspire me in different ways or forms, right?
Yes.
Then I would be able to carve out, right? And answer. But I think, you know, I really admire people who can create new industries from scratch. Right? So I wouldn't point out a particular name in general, but the Edisons, the Carnegies, the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates, right? The Zuckerbergs, the JP Morgans, right? The Rockefellers, right? Why are they able to create new industries from scratch? And when you have someone creating new industries from scratch, you're talking about industries worth hundreds of billions, right, or trillions of dollars in value.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's because they are able to invent new things,
Mm.
and they are able to define the industry,
Mm.
and they are able to expand it based on their own vision. So it's not about scraping from the same red ocean,
Yeah.
right, but to be able to define vast new blue oceans from scratch. Right? And all these industrialists and all this technology or all these biotech folks or because they are able to, I suppose, turn applications of new knowledge into things which are used by hundreds of millions, if not billions of people. Whoever invented the telegraph, whoever invented the television, whoever invented the radio, the internet, Uber, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I really admire the people who can actually create stuff that becomes mainstream. And nowadays, you don't even need a single generation to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You can do it within 10 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Airbnb comes up to mind. I mean, it was just an idea of three guys, and yeah.
Yeah, and the idea isn't even complicated, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not
And
complicated.
I think you brought up a very interesting point, because these guys don't even have a rule book or a guidebook of history in a way, because they are disruptors. They had to build the rule book as they go,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I actually have so many more, but I know you got to go, right? And man, it's been a ride, and it's been an education. I really loved, I think, every segment. I will definitely rewatch this podcast once it's out. Should be out within 3 weeks or so, 3 to 4 weeks, right? But any more questions from you, John?
No. I think more importantly is where can people find Warren? How can people get in touch with you if you want to be found? That's it.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. You can Google me. You can drop me an email as well. That's not an issue, right? I'm pretty accessible, as a person.
All right, guys. So that's yes.
Yeah, and also maybe the products that what was the name of the? Okay, we'll Google it because we use Canva, so hopefully we can
you should try Pixlr, right? For sure.
Okay, here we go, Pixlr.
Yeah.
Okay, MJ.
Yeah, guys, I know you're hearing this. You definitely got a lot of value. The only bad part about this podcast is that it's not longer. And see, I told you we will pass an hour, right?
Yeah, at least I didn't make the most boring person part.
No. We will not allow that. You don't have to worry.
Yeah.
And yeah, guys. Look, if you like this sort of content, of course, remember, like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. Follow us on Spotify, and share it with friends or family who you know for a fact will find it useful. And we'll see you in the next podcast. Signing off.